Alcohol Tipping Point is brought to you in partnership with Speak Studios and Speak Boise. Speak Boise is a community-driven studio space where voices from all walks of life can speak and be heard. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Speak Studios, Speak Boise, and at their website, speakstudios.com. Speak Studios, speak and be heard. Attention Idaho and California residents. If you're shopping for a mortgage, contact PacFi, a mortgage brokerage with the top wholesale lenders in the nation. They are committed to simplifying the mortgage process, saving you time and money. Call 858-442-7048 or visit pacfi.com. NMLS number 1462943, Equal Housing Lender. This podcast is also brought to you by Instant Imprints. Promote better with Instant Imprints. Instant Imprints are Boise's visual communications experts and your place for everything you need to promote your business, club, school, or group. As a locally owned business, Instant Imprints specializes in making your organization more visible with custom branded apparel, embroidery, promotional items, print services, and wide format printing for signs, as well as banners and vehicle graphics. Want better ways to get noticed? Visit Instant Imprints at instantimprints.com/Boise or call 208-IMPRINT. That's 208-467-7468. Welcome to the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm your host, Debbie Maidsner, and I, for once, have someone in the studio with me today. My guest is Beau Payne, and thank you, Beau, for coming here. Can you just introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Deb, for having me so much. I'm really glad to be here. It's a beautiful studio, too. So, like I said, my name is Beau Payne. I am a recovering alcoholic and an addict. I've been clean and sober for just about 5 years now, coming up on 5 years. And, I have a backstory like everybody. I was drafted a couple times by the Marlins, the Brewers, to play professional baseball years and years ago. I've been to the state penitentiary a couple times. Had a lot of highs and lows in life. Like I said, we all have a backstory. I'm clean and sober just about 5 years. So years ago, I just decided to make a turnaround, and I just kind of do my best to share the goodwill and share the hope that there is redemption in people, and here I am. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like we need to go back to the begin. Like, how did it all start for you? Your relationship with alcohol and addiction?
Sure. That's a fantastic question, and it's actually something that I think a lot of alcoholics and addicts kind of need to get to the root of. I know I certainly needed to get to the root of before I was able to really tackle what was making me drink and use drugs and those kind of things. So I want to preface this by saying I don't live in victimhood. I'm not a victim. I've been victimized very badly as a child and things like that. But there comes a point in time where those things kind of cease to have control, and they have to become a moot point if I'm ever going. We alcoholics in general have to move on with our lives. So having said that, I had a very rough childhood. Not on the outside. We had money. We were middle to upper class. My mother has a doctorate from Tulane in New Orleans, and my father has an MBA from Vanderbilt in Nashville, and I have a a GED from an Idaho State Penitentiary on the south side of town in Kuna. But so my parents, we grew up in the South as a little kid. I'm from Tennessee. I was born in Tennessee, and they divorced when I think I was 4. My dad went to Dallas. He's a Vietnam veteran and brought back a lot of real violent issues with him from Vietnam. I wasn't born yet when he came back, but so I had a very turbulent childhood growing up, and I witnessed a lot of violence, a lot of infidelity, just the way my father treated women in general, and my mother, and And so he was leaving us, and a few years later they got back together, and we moved to Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. And I must have been 7 by then. And by that time I was starting to play t-ball, little Pop Warner football, flag football, just like little kids do, And I was always kind of the best guy on the team, and my dad was the coach, and he started to, and this is when things started to go really bad for me in my household living. I understand parents wanting, their children to succeed. And I mean, we're all, competitive and we're proud of our kids and this and that. But my father took things to a different level that years down the road, I finally, with the help of, outside help and a few different doctors at the VA hospital and things like that, that I really started to look into, that I realized that affected my life into a grown man. I'm 48 years old, and really it was only till about age 42 that I started becoming confident and comfortable in my own skin and such and things like that. So not to talk too much on that, but there was a lot of violence in my house. I would do very well at a game. It was just never enough. I was always told I'm an embarrassment. You're no good, you're pathetic, you're pitiful, nobody likes you, everybody. The big thing with my father is always telling me that I embarrassed him in front of all these people. And I'm like, well, I'm 9 years old, and I just had 35 points and 15 rebounds at a basketball game, and how in the world is that embarrassing you? And there would be instances where he would take me into, years and years ago, they used to have these old gross, grungy gas station bathrooms. Not to get too graphic on your show, but just, kind of, and he would bring me at halftime as a 11, 12-year-old across the street or to the nearest bathroom, slap me around, dunk my head in toilets, flush the toilets on my head, bring my head up and tell me what a disgrace I was. And this is like, and I'm like an 11 or 12-year-old kid. And there was a lot of violence in my house too, a lot of physical stuff, punching and throwing and kicking and all that stuff. And we'd come back from baseball tournaments, for example, at midnight, 20, 30 miles outside of where we lived, and he would kick me out of the car at midnight as a young kid. And, of course, there's no cell phones back then, and he'd say, find your own way home. And I guess this was his twisted way of trying to mold me into some strong man or something, and I did the exact opposite, and I'm just sitting out. And then he would swing around and say, you want in the car? And I'd say, well, yes, I do. I'd like to go home, please. I'm scared to death. It's midnight. And he would take off again and play these mind games with me when I was a young child. And so moving forward, the physical stuff got to be the norm, and I accepted it. But I did not realize how emotionally scarred and destroyed I was until years and years later. And that really set the foundation of why I started to drink and use drugs. And I started to drink when I was probably 11 or 12.
Very young.
Yeah, very young. Very young. And again, I don't live in victimhood. I'm not excusing anything, because there comes a point in time in an alcoholic's life where I think that we have to take personal responsibility. If we're sick, then it's incumbent upon us to do something about it. But this is just kind of the foundation of what started my career, I guess, in the drinking area, for lack of a better word. And so I drank to hide a lot of feelings. I drank because I was scared to death. I drank because I had no confidence. I couldn't talk. I didn't know how to talk to girls. I didn't know how to. I was just so scared of what would happen to me at home if I didn't have a perfect game and, any kind of sport that I played, hockey, baseball, soccer, basketball. I mean, you name it. It just, nothing was ever good enough. I could have been Michael Jordan, and he would have found something to beat me over. And so it just became a way to numb out everything. And it talks about some of the literature that I'm involved in, about alcohol being the great elixir. It's like we've arrived. And so when I drank, I felt cooler, better looking, smoother. I felt like I fit in. I didn't feel weird. I didn't feel like an outcast. I felt like I could communicate with people and be one of the guys or one of the crowd. And it's funny because I always had this double life where people kind of looked at me on the outside and didn't know really what was going on inside my house and the things that I was dealing with, and they thought that I had a great life, and there was this kid who's an athlete and he's got all this stuff, and inside I was just absolutely destroyed. And I was a scared, timid kid who was scared of my own shadow. And that really lasted up until probably, like I said, my early 40s, and a lot of rehabs and a lot of stuff, trying to figure things out. And when I finally figured out that I've got a lot more problems than just my drinking, is when I started to get better. Yeah. So that's kind of a, I guess the foundation of what started my drinking is to make me feel better about myself,
Yeah, and so you started at an early age just to numb the pain and just to kind of, definitely as a coping mechanism in that world you were living in. And I mean, you bring up such a good point. You don't know what someone's going through. You can't tell by the outside. Here you are in a, regular, successful family, probably the star jock of your high school, and all that was going on.
It's something I like to. I love it when folks like you ask me to maybe speak or do things like that, because one of the things that I'm so passionate about is because I have been to prison for a couple times. I've probably been incarcerated about 9 years out of the last 23 for various DUIs and drinking things, and it takes all types. There's clean cut, educated people that have made mistakes who are addicts or alcoholics. There's the other side of the tracks. There's everything in between, and I've really worked hard over my life to get away from the stigma of judging people. I think we're all prejudged, or we all judge people to an extent. I mean, that's human nature, but I've just seen so many different, from every race, creed, sex, gender, religion. I mean, what have you, that have suffered from this insidious disease that alcoholism and addiction doesn't care what you look like, where you're from, what your socioeconomic status is in life. It has one goal, and that's to kill you. And it bothers me when people are judged, when people make snap judgments on people and say, oh, what a piece of this and that. Look at him. Oh, he's in trouble again, or this and that. And I said, well, you don't know what people have gone through, and you don't know what makes people tick, and you don't know why people have done the things they do. And I had a guy the other day ask me, say, well, you look like kind of a normal guy, clean cut guy, and you look like, you had a lot of things, and you were an athlete. And he said, why did you drink? And, he says, I just can't wrap my head around it. And I explained a little bit to him, but I can't wrap my head around it is what a lot of people understand. And it's not just me, it's a lot of us. I'm sure maybe you've experienced some of that yourself, but so you never can tell. So I just like to have, let people keep, remind them, keep an open mind of what you don't know about people and what they may have been through.
Yeah. And even how you feel about your own self.
Oh.
Like I can't wrap my, just like you said, like I can't wrap my head around the fact that I have a problem.
It's
for a while there, like. So you tell me more about just kind of your journey then. You got drafted to, you obviously were a very talented baseball player and athlete in other sports, it sounds like. What kind of happened? What was the trajectory of your life then? Around high school, you mentioned you ended up getting your GED.
Sure. Great question. So I actually ended up getting my GED about 6 or 7 years ago. So I was in Vancouver, BC up until probably age 15, and I was becoming a known baseball player, and I was very talented, and if I had done things differently, had a career waiting on me, definitely, which didn't pan out, but it's led to a lot of other neat things in my life too. So anyways, I moved to Miami, Florida, and I lived in Vancouver for about 10 years. I am a U.S. citizen, like I said, so moved to Florida to play on a better baseball team in a bigger high school, and it's kind of the epicenter of a lot of big-time baseball stuff going on down there. And plus, who doesn't want to live and have their toes in the sand in December and 80 degrees? So you can imagine what it's like for a 16-year-old kid in Miami, Florida, with a cocaine addiction and a serious alcohol addiction. And things went a little haywire for me. I juxtaposed this life of trying to keep up this one side of this good athlete who's going to either go pro out of high school or go to a big-time college with this other life of, spending it. It sounds fun, like, oh, you drive to the Keys every weekend, or go to South Beach and this and that, but it's not. There's nothing glamorous about that life. The life I was living in, spending my time in the ghettos of Miami and buying crack cocaine at age 16 and it just became too much. And so I ended up becoming academically ineligible. I just flunked out of school. I got in some trouble. Got kicked out, actually, flunked out, kicked out, whatever you want to say. And I lost my draft status, so I was ineligible to be drafted. So I moved back to Vancouver with my mom, and I went to a junior college in California called College of the Siskiyous in a small little town in Northern California. Ended up playing baseball there. And it's funny, I'm 48 now, and this was probably age 19. And I was really, really talented pitcher. I threw hard. I threw 93, 94 miles an hour when I was in shape. But the problem was, and that's first, second round draft material. That's big bucks back then. This is 93, 94, 92, 19, in the 90s. But then, 5-6 days later, and I'm not sure how much you know about baseball or whatever, but a starting pitcher pitches every 5 days. Oh. So the next 5 days, it would be my turn to pitch again. And my velocity on my pitches would be 10, 12 miles an hour slower than what they were. And that's because I was drunk all week and my arm was hurting and I looked like absolute hell. And so the scouts and the organizations, they wonder, like, what's wrong with this guy? He doesn't take anything serious. So nobody wants to really invest any money. It's like any organization. You don't want to invest money in an employee who's going to be drunk all the time on your dime. And so I ended up being a late round draft pick and was offered a little bit of money and just nothing that I had one time had aspired to and I quit. I quit baseball for good and I enlisted in the Army. So I went from a potential first, second, third round pick to a very late round pick and squandered everything away baseball wise because of drugs and alcohol.
And so then you decided to go into the Army.
Yes.
Which is another, like, big drinking culture.
It's huge.
Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, no problem. So it's so funny. I had such an odd relationship with my father. He was so abusive to me for so long, and yet I longed for his what's the word?
Approval.
His approval. I mean, it's just so, diametrically opposed to to one another. Someone treats you so horribly, yet you long for their approval. And so, anyways, he was an infantry officer in the Army in Vietnam, and he was actually a very good officer and a very good soldier, and decorated, and fought 2 tours. And so I went in the Army and I went in the infantry because I thought that would make him proud of me. And like you said, it's just a massive drinking culture, and especially in the infantry because we're a bunch of guys who think we're so strong and tough and we're so proud of being, airborne and this and that, which to an extent is good because that's what you want out of the people who represent your country and fight war. You want tough people, but again, my drinking just took over everything, and it just there would be the guys who would drink all night and go home and sleep and get up in the morning and be ready to go. And I would be the guy who would drink and not go home and continue to drink. And I would get in trouble and I would show up not, drunk on duty and get in trouble. They call them Article 15s in the Army. And I stayed in for 3 years and then I was kindly asked to leave.
You weren't like discharged or
I was honorably discharged.
Okay.
Yeah, I was honorably discharged. I went through a lot of neat schools, airborne school, air assault school, stuff like that. And I was very dependable when we went to the field or we went somewhere because I was a strong guy and I just took pride in what I did. But when we were when we were back in the barracks or we had downtime, I was an absolute terror. I was just a wreck and I was in trouble, and that's when kind of my brushes with the law started happening. And the Army got fed up with it, the powers that be, and they said, hey, you need to change or you have to go. And I tried to change, and that was the first time I ever went to rehab, was in 96 for 60 days, and that was my introduction to recovery. Yeah.
And was that, do you feel, I mean, that was a while ago, but do you, I guess this could be a two-parter, but as far as how the military treats mental health and addiction, you were active and they sent you to rehab through the military, is that right?
Yes, I had gotten a DUI. In 1996, I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, so this was right on the state line of Tennessee, so close to Nashville. And so anyways, yes, I got a DUI, spent a couple days in jail down there in Tennessee, and then they said, go to rehab or you're going to get kicked out. So I said, oh, okay, I don't want to get kicked out. So I went to rehab. But the Army is very, I think I'm not as in touch with what's going on, I guess, 20-something years later, but back then, there wasn't a whole lot of, it was a lot of lip service, like, well, just go do this and come back, and there's no aftercare or anything like that. No one's really in touch with how do I put this? They really didn't care back then. They just said, stop or you're out, and that's not, you have to get to the root core of issues of why people do the things they do in order to get better. So I don't think they cared as much back then for people's mental health. I think because of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places, I think that awareness is through the roof now, and I love to see it because there's, soldier and Marine and other branches of the service, the suicide rate is just incredibly high compared to normal civilian rate. The incarceration rate of the United States penitentiaries are 9 to 10% of U.S. servicemen and servicewomen, compared to 2% of the population. That
I didn't know that. That's
insane.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I'm always kind of advocating for people just to support veterans, whether you support. I don't care what you think about war, that stuff, but you can support the individual, the man or the woman, as compared. You don't have to support what's going on, but so I definitely advocate for that.
Yeah, my first nursing job was at the VA here.
Oh, the Boise VA. It's a fantastic hospital. It's probably the best VA that I've ever been to.
Good. That's nice to hear.
So
that 60 days, was anything helpful during that rehab?
Yes, a ton of it was. It set the stage for my life today as I know it. It didn't take, obviously, right away. I'm not sure how much time we have, so I'll kind of condense things. But I went to a 60-day rehab in a hospital in Augusta, Georgia, at Fort Gordon, and I knew I had a problem. I knew I was completely powerless over this stuff, but I always thought I could control it eventually. I could go out and get drunk for a couple nights, and that'll be it. But and later in my life, 2 nights of me drinking led to 2 months, led to 2 years, led to, so it's progressive. But it did set the stage, or I guess it, for me knowing, because I walked into an AA meeting. They made us go to AA, or as part of the program. And I walked into an AA meeting and I saw all these people laughing and smiling, and, white people, black people, men, women. I mean, all these different, just different parts of society, all just kind of getting along. And I was like, wow, this is such a cool looking little society. You know what I mean? And they were all there for one reason, and that was to help each other get sober and to stay sober. And, I didn't hear anything about politics. I didn't hear any, the stuff that all the peripheral stuff that we hear nowadays, that kind of dominates the news cycle, and all the division that I guess we've had in the country so much. And I stay out of that stuff. But my point is that a lot of that stuff was left at the door, and everybody just kind of was there to encourage each other and help each other. And I said, wow, I felt like the first time I ever drank. I felt like I had found my crew, my tribe. And, of course, it didn't take. 60 days was up, and I was on fire. I was like, oh, sober, sober, sober. And I was spreading the word. And I remember getting on a plane and going back to my unit from Georgia to Kentucky. And there was a thunderstorm in Mississippi. So we were on a C-130, and we had to ground the plane and stay overnight in Tupelo, Mississippi, or excuse me, Biloxi, Mississippi. And that night I was at the NCO Academy getting drunk. And, so it didn't, so I've learned to listen a lot more than talk. Back then I thought I knew it all, 60 days sober, and thought I could tell everybody how to do it. And that led to a long time, a lot of in and out of rehabs and stuff. But that set the stage for me really feeling like, gosh, I haven't had this feeling that I belong since the first time I ever took a drink when I was probably, 11 years old or so.
Yeah. So, well, they say the opposite of addiction is community.
Yeah. I mean, the fellowship, community. I mean, there's a saying that I love to say, and I steal stuff out of literature, and but we have to do together what we can't do by ourselves. And I tried for so long to quit on my own, and because I guess I had such false pride or arrogant pride, or I thought I was tougher or better than. I said, I don't need this, or and I just kept falling flat on my face. And finally, in 2016, I just gave in. And when I say gave in, I mean that in a positive way. I stopped fighting everything and anything, and just said, I'm just going to do what I've seen other people do to better their lives and to get sober. And like I said, it's, I tried from 96 to 16 to do it my way, and it didn't work. And I've done it a different way for the last 5 years, and I've had, infinite success. But the success that I've had, that I measure success by, is my inner success and my inner feelings about myself, and not the size of my bank account or just things like that. The relationships that I've established or reestablished with my family, with my mother, with my sister, with, I had a recent bout of COVID, as you know, and I was really, really sick with the Delta variant. And I had just 1 million people every day call me, text me, are you okay? Can I bring you something? Do you need anything? And it's just completely foreign to me before I got sober, because people would never, ever want anything to do with me. And I like to say everybody left me, but the truth is I pushed everybody away. They didn't leave me. I gave them no choice, because the way I was when I was drinking all the time. So life is infinitely better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was different then in 2016?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I had been involved in the Department of Correction of the judicial system for a long time, in and out. And I have 2 beautiful children. They're in their 20s now. And I just had to take stock of my life. And I knew that I still had a lot of ability to do some really good things in life. But I knew that none of that stuff was going to be ever possible if I continued to drink. And the pain for me, it wasn't a woe is me pain. I'm in a jail cell or a prison cell, or I'm homeless, or in a union gospel mission shelter. It wasn't anything like that. It was the pain for me. Hurting other people got worse than the pain for me hurting myself. And I started to break down and cry all the time. I would look around and I would just have these fits of crying, because I would have these overwhelming waves of guilt and shame by the way that the broken promises to my children, and the way that the lost relationship with my mother, who, by the way, is like my best friend in the world today. And, I used to get emails once every few months from her in prison, just saying, hi, hope you're well, Mom. That would be it. And now we talk all the time, and if I get an email, she's like, hey, did you see the college football rankings came out? And she's a big fan, and we talk, and she ends her emails with, I love you and I'm proud of you. And she's 76, 77, and who knows how much time we have left with our loved ones. So the relationships that I've cultivated with people are the most important things to me in my life, without a doubt.
Can I ask about your relationship with your dad?
Sure. Yeah, there's not a lot to talk about there, honestly. He lives in Europe. He lives in Montenegro. He's lived in Peru before that a long time, in South America. Then I think he went to Colombia. I actually worked for him back in the 2000s. He had a corporate recruiting outfit, and I was in the midst of a couple-year run of sobriety. This was in Bellevue, Washington, Seattle area, Kirkland, Bellevue. And we always kind of we just never talked about the stuff that happened as a kid because it was a financial relationship. I was a good worker. I was sober-ish at the time. He was my boss. And the last time I saw him was in a Denver airport where he tore up my boarding pass and left me there. And we had gotten an argument. We were doing a job in Houston, hiring some people, flying back through Denver into Seattle. And this was 2007. And I can't even remember. My sister and I were even talking about this the other day. But he tore up my boarding pass and said, find your own way home again. And I'm like, wow, I've heard that one a million times before. And I haven't heard from him since. It's been probably 15 years. So we don't talk. I've done some extensive work on my relationship with him and come to a place of neutrality where I'm not mad at him, nor do I like him or care for him. I don't want to speak for my family members or other people, but he's just not he's not a factor in my life anymore. And he really ran my life for a long time without even physically having anything to do with me. But he was an albatross around my neck by the things he did to me. But I have worked very hard not to let those things affect me anymore. And a lot of kids go through what I went through. It's not just, me. And so that's why I like to, children shouldn't have to be affected 30 years later after they're 10, 12 years old, that it literally destroyed the first half of my life. And again, I'm not blaming it on him. I'm just saying that it's just tough. It was very tough. And it led to some really deep, dark, lonely times. So I don't really have any wanting to have any relationship with him. I don't hate him. I just don't have any feelings for him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's just a guy.
Which is, more of a neutral place, like you said.
Yeah. And it's a nice place, too, because I don't have to get mad. I don't like to be mad at people. I don't like to have hate in my heart for people. I mean, we're human and we can dislike things or not approve of, there's people probably won't approve of me, still for the things I've done in the past. But I can't worry about that kind of stuff. But I certainly don't want to walk around life every day having hatred in my heart for things that I can't control. I can't control the guy. He has no power over me anymore, but he doesn't really mean anything to me anymore. So it's like, why would I even want to waste my time thinking about him? I've done a lot of work on my relationship with him as a child and moving forward, and it's over now. And I'm in a really good place and a good state of mind, and there's no reason for me to revisit any of that. I'm not into name calling, and it is what it is, and we don't have a relationship, and I'm more than okay with that because the family members that I do have a relationship with are wonderful people, fantastic people. They love me, I love them, and that's what I care about the most.
Yeah. I'm curious because my vice was alcohol. And you mentioned that drugs were an issue for you too. Did you feel like was alcohol your biggest issue, or how was it different kind of quitting drug use versus alcohol use, or kind of talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm an alcoholic first and foremost. Alcohol is my drug of choice. They've had so many different scientific names for it over the years, polydrug abuse, which means, you like everything, I guess, and I have done pretty much every drug known to man and been addicted to it. I've been addicted to heroin, to crack cocaine, to methamphetamine, to, I come from the camp of if it was in front of me, I would smoke it, shoot it, eat it, snort it, drink it. And unfortunately, that's just the way that my DNA, I guess, is made up. But generally, it all started with me through alcohol. And so alcohol has been my worst demon over the years. But it would lead to, so just to give you an example, I would go out to the bars as, late 20s with my buddies, and we would drink and have fun and watch a ball game, shoot pool, just doing what young people do at the bars, I guess, and they would all go home at 1 or 2 when it closed, and, some were married and some weren't, but they'd get up and go to work. I would go to the worst part of town at 2 a.m, look for crack cocaine. And I would, I think I may have worked at Nordstrom or someplace like that. So I had a suit on, and I would be walking through the worst parts of big cities, sticking out like a sore thumb at 2:33 in the morning with a Hugo Boss suit on, like, wow, what's that? Gee, I wonder what that guy's doing in this part of town for. And I would just walk up to people and buy drugs from them. And then I would, because the feeling is just, it's so overpowering. And then I would go to a hotel or a more of a motel, a rent for a week type of flea bag motel for a week, and wouldn't be heard of for 5 or 6 days. And I would blow thousands of dollars, and I would be homeless, and I would have nowhere to go. And I would end up in a homeless shelter, or places when it got cold. I remember in Spokane, I knew this night security guard at a post office who let me sleep in there from 2 till 6 a.m. before it opened again. And, I've slept in alleys and missions and jails and prisons and crack houses. And I've also, got myself together and done well and had some nice digs too, So that's what I talk a lot about. You can never judge people for what they've done. And the rabbit hole, my story goes a lot further than what I've kind of said, but I got to the point, honestly, and I'm not sure how much, I again, not too graphic, but I was so destroyed by drugs and alcohol that I was doing things for them and letting people do things to me for them. And men and women, both, they just became not human beings. They became a conduit to get the drugs or get the alcohol. I didn't look at them as, I was just a dead soul walking.
Yeah.
And would do anything that I could possibly do to make it through the day.
Well, and I think a lot of people associate that walking through the alleyways and whatnot with like really big cities or LA but you're talking Spokane, Washington. Yeah. Boise, you could probably do that if you wanted, right?
Yeah, I've seen it in Boise. Yeah. It's on a smaller scale, but Spokane's a really rough town compared to people. I don't think folks know that. And it's not a big town. It's probably the same as roughly Boise, 200,000 in the city. But, I've also been in Seattle and, back east and stuff like that. So it really doesn't, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
It's the problem's not going to go away whether you're in small town USA, middle of Nebraska with 4,000 people, or whether you're in New York City, or in between. I had some tough times, and on the streets, and I was always, one of the things that held me back is I would go to a VA rehab. I've been to rehab probably 15 times in my life at least, and 28-day rehabs, and I would get better. And feel better and look better, look healthier, and get my strength back. And then I would go back out and stay sober for a month and say, oh, I got this. Oh, I don't need this program anymore. Man, I can do this. I'm looking better and feeling better. Let's go to the bar and see what I can do. 3-4 days later, I'm face down in the ditch somewhere, lost everything. It just never ends with me as far as touching that stuff to my lips. So I guess, sorry to be so long-winded, but when I touch alcohol to my lips, I can't stop. And that leads to everything that's ever been bad in my life, to drugs, to you name it. So I'm an alcoholic first and foremost, yeah.
It seems like that's what you hear, from most people with the polysubstance use disorder. Alcohol is that gateway. I hate to say gateway, but
it is. For me, it certainly was.
Tackling that just helped with the other drugs. Is that right? Or because to me, it's new and interesting.
Yeah. I think that it's, I talked a little bit about when we started this, that I drank because I like to mask a lot of things, or I like to. I did because it was a survival thing. It's how I survived. But I can't. I have to admit also that even today, even though I wouldn't know in 5 years, most men and women drink because we like the way it makes us feel too. That's just the point of it. It makes us feel good. So I drank a lot because it made me feel good too, the effects that it produced on me. And then those side effects that came from that was, I felt cooler and smarter and all this stuff too, and more confident. But and I liked the way that drugs made me feel too. So, I don't know if it's my makeup, my body makeup, my DNA, I do know that, I was, mentally obsessed with this stuff. Once I started drinking, I would have 3 or 4 or 5 drinks at a bar. And then the next thing I know, what I'm thinking of is, where can I get methamphetamine? Where can I go get cocaine? Where I look around and see normal people having a few drinks, or even, tying one on one night, for once a month, and all I'm thinking about is, how am I going to go get drugs for the night? And I can't explain why, but I can't explain how I don't do it anymore. So that's really...
Yeah, and I think like your inhibitions are chemically lowered, and then you're always chasing the high.
Absolutely, that's a great point.
Gosh, you've been through a lot, Beau.
Yeah, but I have a buddy, and he wouldn't mind me saying his name on air. His name is Julian Davis, and he lives in Hamilton, Ontario, just outside of Toronto, Ontario. And I went to high school with him in BC. And I think he's 16 years clean and sober. He's my age, so he's 48. He was the worst of the worst. He was part of my crew in high school, and he ended up going to prison as a young man for doing some things and just selling drug-involved stuff. And, I was coming home from a meeting the other night, and I was riding on the Greenbelt, and it was dusky, and it was just real beautiful out, and I felt great. And I texted him, and we talk all the time, but I just said, hey, man, just want to let you know, man, I'm really appreciative that you're in my life, dude. And we've known each other 30-something years. And I tell my friends this because I talk about the relationships that I have people, and you never know when someone's going to leave us. I've had a lot of people leave me and leave us and die, and I've seen, for another time. And he said, hey, man, I love you. And I said, I want to tell you something. He said, people like you and I and other people, addicts, alcoholics, yourself too, Deb, anybody anybody who's struggled with this stuff has gone through hell and back so we can help other people. And everything that has, I've done in my life, he's done in his life, people have done in he, she, we, our lives is this beautiful tapestry of things that we don't have to look at it as negative. So it's all like me sitting right here is where God has brought me to, and in my opinion, and not to push some religious and stuff like that. And so it's up to what do I do with the hand that I've been dealt? And, me being a failure in baseball, well, when I shouldn't have, by all means, I should have been a superstar, but I was a failure. So do I look at that as, oh, I'm a failure, woe is me, let's go drink over it? Or do I look at it like, okay, I can turn this into a positive. I can flip the script. I can tell people my experiences, what not to do, and what I have done now, and what I do on the daily. And then hopefully somebody can see that and say, wow, I don't have to go down that road too. Or I felt like he did, or I felt alone, or I felt scared, or I felt insecure. And they don't have to feel like a failure. And so I really believe that I was put in a position to share my story with other people and to help other people, and that for me brings me more satisfaction than any inning I could have thrown in the big leagues or anything like that. So
yeah, I mean, it's great meaning, and you're definitely helping people, sharing.
Yeah, it's kind of it helps me too. I mean, it's just a really neat way of life, and it's I just really enjoy it.
So what are your plans for the future?
Well, I've got a lot of, like I told you off air, I've got a lot of health issues going on. So I've got most likely a heart surgery coming up. I have to have a valve replacement, and I have what's called an ascending aneurysm on my aorta, which I need to take care of. So that's going to be kind of a big undertaking. And the VA, I think, is going to fly me to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota next year. Don't know quite yet. Maybe I can push it out a year or two max. But it's not an if. It's a when. So we're just waiting to figure it out. But more right now, I'm back in school trying to finish my degree in sports management. Got about a year to go. I've been piecemealing school since '92.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend last night. I have to get my science done, and so I have to do physics this fall. And I was like, oh my goodness, that word just scares me just thinking of it. But I'll get it done. I just big part of my life is balance. It's so huge. When I don't have balance, I can't do anything. But when I do have balance and I'm structured, and I generally can figure things out. So to finish school, I enjoy speaking in front of people and, sharing my story and just kind of taking things day by day. And I've been doing that for years. And it's, I have a nice life. It's not filled with, Mercedes-Benz and 5,000 square foot houses and stuff. But I love my nice specialized bike that I rip around town in. And, it's so much fun, and it's such a great city to ride your bike in, and I love the Greenbelt. And I've got a nice tight-knit group of friends that I spend time with. I go to a lot of ball games, Boise Hawks games, and I do some speaking stuff here and there, and the sky's the limit. I just, I don't know what's going to happen with my future, but I know that if I stay sober one day at a time, that really what I want to do will happen. Not can happen, but will happen. And I have no doubt about it whatsoever. So yeah, we'll see. But it's nothing. Whatever's going to happen is going to be good. I can tell you that. It's not going to be negative.
Well, I believe you, and I can just see your soul shining through. Yeah. Beau has really bright blue eyes. It could be your North Face blue sweatshirt.
Well, they were dead for a long time. I
bet that you could really see it in your eyes, but like you said, more importantly, just how you feel and how you're helping others and how you're showing up. And thank you. Thanks for coming to the studio.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to be here. It's a really neat little studio too. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'll just want to kind of close, I guess, with this. I never say no to anybody who asks me to share or to help, or because I've had so much help over the years from other people that I feel it's very incumbent upon myself to give of myself. And I'm not trying to put myself on some moral high ground or anything. It's not hard to say, absolutely, I'll share, speak, help. It's just what we do.
Perfect. So that reminds me, how can people find you?
Yeah, they can. I'm on Facebook, just Beau Payne,
and it's B-E.
Yes, BEAU, PAYNE. There'll probably be some just baseball stuff or recovery stuff, and I'm under the handle Sober Beau on IG, on Instagram, and you can look me up that way, and you can Google my name. Generally, I'm on YouTube. There's some podcasts and kind of stuff about my life story and stuff like that too. So yeah.
Super cool. I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you too, Deb. I appreciate it. Thank you so
much. Hey everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm always here for you guys, so please feel free to reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point, and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com. Again, I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week. And until then, see you next time.